Welcome back to Full Circle. I'm Hilary Doyle. It is one thing to add AI to your business. It's quite another to rethink your business around AI. This next wave of innovation is going much further than tools and experiments. It investigates the question, if you were starting from scratch, building your business for the future, what could you do differently? Which legacy structures would you keep? What would get left behind? And which systems might you rethink entirely? What comes from this exploration is likely to separate the winning teams from the losing ones within the next 3 to 5 years. So, to get you the answers you need, I'm joined by two leaders who have genuinely done this all before. Shanil Ebrahim is the head of AI strategy at Deloitte Canada, and Dan Dickinson is Chief Information Officer at BioScript and formerly CIO at EQ Bank and Artera Wines. Shanil, Dan, I'm delighted to have you here. Welcome to Full Circle.
Thank you for having us.
Dan, you built EQ Bank as a digital company from day one. Then you stepped into two legacy businesses as a CIO and launched their digital transformations. With the benefit of hindsight, how did you think differently about systems when you were building from scratch?
It's always a challenge, I think, with any systems or any companies, any industries. There's some mix of brand new and you're trying to catch up to it, and legacy that you're just not going to overcome. And so, I had that opportunity in the banking space to build somewhat from scratch, but you're still plugging into legacy payment networks, that sort of thing. Same with the wine business. You are still working with, I'd say, very non-digital traditional players. I think in the healthcare space, it's been this really interesting mix. We're seeing where new technologies, AI included, are really kind of pushing the edge of how we're doing some of the things in the diagnostic world and other places, but ultimately I'm still receiving faxes on a regular basis. And so the trick is to really find a way to push ahead the things that you can innovate and change on.
Shanil, what would you say is the biggest pain point for your legacy clients when it comes to this AI transformation? What's proving hardest to transform?
I'll tell you what's not hard, first of all, is the technology right now. I think the technology is really moving really, really fast. What we find is the hardest thing is the way the business actually works. A lot of organizations have years and years of process debt, whether it's too many handoffs or too many approvals, too many workarounds, and it's very easy to just get trapped in that. The good thing is AI exposes a lot of it. It doesn't just magically fix it, right? And working with Dan, like especially in the specialty pharmacy space, AI can do a lot of things like summarize a patient case or read a form. But the harder question is, can organizations in this space just redesign the whole end-to-end flow? So for specialty pharmacies, everything from like an intake to reimbursement to patient follow-up. And doing all of that is just much harder because it touches things beyond technology, like things that we don't like to talk about, like roles and governance and compliance and a little bit of the non-sexy stuff that is not AI. Those are the things that actually prevents outcomes. And those are the things that I find is the hardest pain point to get around right now.
Dan, does that track for you in terms of, what you found to be the trickiest part of transformation now across two legacy businesses? Is it pretty consistent?
Yeah, it's that dichotomy. You've got all the new kind of tools that you can use, the new ways you can advance things, but there are other parts of even the same companies that are trying to partner with you. So for example, you might have a company working with us saying, we're expecting that you're using more modern tools, and in some cases specifically AI, to sort of do these things to expedite the onboarding of a new patient or something. That same company, in a contract that we have with them, their lawyers might have said, you can't do anything with AI without checking with us first, right? So you get sort of that dual ask, or almost those contradicting things that come. And that's a little bit to be expected because you have something new that isn't entirely well understood, even by technologists, let alone by lawyers and compliance departments. But to Shanil's point, the technology isn't the hard part there. You put guardrails around that. You can think about how you do that. You have the right governance around it, and that's very possible. But the people you're trying to convince or work through with this is actually has nothing to do with technology. It's that lack of certainty. They're paid to get certainty from things. And so this can feel very disruptive, and that can definitely be the slowdown.
Is that an alignment issue then? Because that challenge has plagued business for well over 30 years. Back in 1993, Michael Hammer, he was a business process re-engineering expert. He estimated that 50 to 70% of organizations failed to achieve real transformation because they couldn't align around a collective vision at the leadership level. At the time, it was a communication problem, and that was 1993. AI is a whole new language. I imagine that makes alignment around a communicated vision even harder. So, Shanil, where do you see companies actually getting this right?
When we talk to any organization in general around let's transform the entire enterprise with AI, sounds bold, but very quickly, I think if you talk to anyone in the C-suite, transformation gets quite vague very quickly. It's very hard to align when it's vague, sounds expensive, hard to govern. So the question is, what is the right kind of area to get them to align on transformation? So generally, we say, where in an organization can you truly unlock value? Um, and it could be, it could be a back office kind of function. It could be something that is much more patient oriented, but it's just one area of the business where you can say, let's redesign, patient onboarding, let's say for a patient support program, where you're just changing everything from referral to start of therapy. And that gives you some real outcomes to measure on. And then you look at, let's call it the connected use cases across that journey. And once you're able to transform that and you see that happening across different workflows, now you can take that pieces of tangible transformation and take it to other parts of the business as well. So I think that's where we're starting to see much more alignment and much more appetite in terms of how to move forward with transformation in general.
What kind of system slice is big enough to matter, but also safe enough to start with?
The sweet spot to me is, usually a contained journey with, clear boundaries or repeated volume and just measurable outcomes. I use that patient onboarding example, right? It touches enough of the business to matter, but it can also be governed carefully because you can define what AI actually does, where humans actually approve it, what gets escalated. And the mistake is just starting with either, a tiny back office task that nobody notices or mission critical process where the risk tolerance is way too low, right? And so the right first slice should be just important. It should be measurable. It should be repeatable, just safe enough that you can learn without putting the whole business or the patient at risk, right? So that's where I would end up starting.
Based on your personal experience now across 3 transformations and counting, Dan, do you see anything getting thrown out or automated that's starting to feel like a mistake? So legacy pieces that business leaders should be thinking about hanging on to.
Well, yeah, I think that they're in the rush to automate everything and almost absolve themselves from having to protect against things like bias. I think about the banking industry, for example, years ago. The regulators here in Canada were very explicit to say, if you're going to make a loan decision, you have to be able to explain your loan decision. And so that happened to be, a human process that it was going through, making the decisions, obviously aided by decision support systems and other things. But this idea that you're going to start to point loan decisions at increasingly black boxes like, machine learning tools and a neural net in the background that can't maybe explain exactly how it learned enough to make the decision that it made. There's something happening behind the scenes that could be traceable, but in a way that's going to be understandable to the person who is up for that loan. So, the regulators wouldn't let a company absolve themselves of that, and you don't get to absolve yourself of it just by handing it off to a computer to expedite. So, I think finding ways to expedite the more laborious tasks in there and get a broker or a borrower a faster answer, those are all good aims. Handing off the decision making that can affect people's lives and even affect society, you can't do, right? So finding that balance, you can't throw out the good or the necessary tough work just to save yourself the time. You still have to do that tough work.
I want to understand how you build AI systems into your business that are compatible with this requirement for transparency and explanation. What does documentation look like, for example, when it's done properly across an AI layer?
I'd say it varies depending on what kind of tools you're talking about, and to some degree, you are, eh, uh, and sometimes this is a regulatory decision to say if I need a clear answer, you might still need to have the human in the loop who is actually sort of documenting, okay, this was the recommendation, this is how I overrode it, or this is how I went along with it. We're hearing lots of studies about if I get two doctors to look at a scan 100 times, how often are they both right? If I get an AI to look at it, how often is the AI right? But if I get an AI and a doctor to look at it, it's the most right, right? So I think that's a way to sort of protect against the worry that I kind of mentioned before, Hillary, like to actually have that combination of judgment, but the insane horsepower that sort of comes with AI.
Shanil, you were nodding. What would you add?
Coming back to what Dan was mentioning around um, what are some of the things that you automated, what feels like a mistake. Um, Sometimes it's you don't want to automate away the exact moments where patients most need them or they want to be seen. We can call them inefficiencies like phone calls and follow-ups and case manager judgment or exceptions. But for a patient, that inefficiency might be the moment someone realizes, that they're confused or scared or, cannot afford the medication. If we automate the patient relationship too aggressively, we risk creating, just a faster system that is less attentive and less safe to patients as well.
So we need to be cautious then about where AI can accidentally over optimize.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Don't just look at a process map and assume anything manual, slow, repetitive, or human heavy is inefficiency. Sometimes that's where judgment or trust and safety really kind of comes in, right? We always start with process maps, but if you really don't understand why the work even exists in the first place, yeah, I think you'll end up basically automating or agentifying a lot of things where value is actually created.
And then back on the healthcare side, the healthcare providers do not need one more distraction. They do not need me to automate something and download work to them. So we're very careful about that too, making sure we're not offloading effort into a system that is already strained, and the doctors and nurses do not need one more extra task to do that. Just even if it helps me save 5 minutes, they don't need something that costs them 5 seconds. That's not a trade-off that anyone should be making. And I would say that we as technologists have been pretty guilty of doing that download onto the healthcare system for the past 20 or 30 years. So in the short term, it will always feel like it hurts a bit because it's different. But we are really trying to make sure that we tie our technology and transformation efforts together with real improvements across, whether it's an economic improvement or a patient experience improvement or whatever that looks like.
Shanil, how convincing is the economic argument here?
A lot of organizations don't want to change their workflow. And I think this is where AI is actually making it a little bit more palatable to say, well, how do we do this a little bit differently? And it's not as risky, right? There's a lot of stuff around legacy systems that can now get migrated where typically you would need a lot of money and heavily experienced people who understand the legacy system, which is now going to be a narrow set, helping you migrate that. And now with AI, that's actually changing the equation. So I do think this is where I think transformation is starting to happen in a lot of these type of legacy organizations. Like we work a lot with government as well. And now we're having real conversations on actually redesigning parts of the government with AI at the center and providing services in a different way and building some of the systems ground up using AI codes. I do see some dramatic changes happening within the next 18 months. And I think the speed of what it can happen at the cost is, I think, something that's probably gonna end up blowing us away just in terms of how fast it could be done. We're starting to see organizations that typically wouldn't have even touched this that is actually not just speculating, but actually going all in.
I'm going to give you a typical IT answer, which is it depends. 3 months ago, I might have had a different answer on this one. I mean, the way that development tools are going, I don't necessarily need someone who I'd think of as a classic developer in this. I need someone who's almost more of a business analyst who understands the business really well, who can actually tell a tool what I need it to do, and then it goes off and does it. So I say it's very much up in the air right now about what a team, an innovation team or a technology team is going to look like. Some of the roles will stay the same, but I think they will look vastly different than how they did 10 years ago even. So I think where there hasn't really been a firm divide between business and technology, quote unquote, for a while. I think that blending just continues even more with this evolution into these different kind of tooling. I'd love to see really hardcore business people become data practitioners and data scientists, and actually creating code with these tools that solve the business problems they're asking for, and we can skip 5 or 6 of the steps that we go through today. So we're kind of starting with we've got just a traditional team, and then alongside that, I think we're going to start seeing pods of, I don't know, these are people that sort of are trying to solve a problem, and there's not really a structure or a pattern to them. It's going to feel a little nebulous, but that's okay until we figure out what we're doing. There just have to be guardrails around them so they don't hurt themselves. But like, let's figure it out. Let's let them learn, and let's take an atypical approach to this. Let's not try to jam the old tooling into or the new tooling into the old structures. I think that's going to be the key takeaway.
Shanil, what are the distinctions in terms of leadership skills that you're seeing as critical for this transformation phase in AI relative to the skills you saw as critical for legacy leaders?
I think the old leadership model was really built around managing functions and approving decisions and controlling risk. I think that's really, really changing. It still does matter, of course, because we're still in regulated industries like healthcare or banking or others, right? But it's changing because now we're empowering a lot of leaders to be orchestrators and creators, and that really, really changes the equation. Dan and I were just joking about this. I don't even know if it's really joking about it, but we're talking about a reality where getting into the code was not something that we typically would have done nowadays. And now the access points are so much easier. It's not to say that now every leader needs to be a coder, but I think the new set of leaders are going to be even clearer, not only on the business problem, but they're fast enough to test and learn themselves, and disciplined enough that they could go into the details and pull themselves out to be able to prove the ROI. And I fundamentally think that as a result of this, a lot of business leaders are going into a technology like AI, and it's not going to be something that is just going to be owned by IT necessarily. It is becoming a big business problem as well. And I think what it helps us is if there's a significant amount of leaders now stepping into this space and have the understanding, have the clarity, that probably builds more trust in the organization when everyone kind of understands what's happening, and allows them to really own the outcome when they understand this. So I really feel like the best AI leaders is not going to be the best technologists necessarily. It's going to be the one who are going to be willing to dive in and themselves fundamentally understand how AI can actually change the business and measure the economics around it.
So, absent running out to buy coding for dummies, just in terms of sequencing for leaders who are still wondering where to start, what are the steps you'd recommend they look to implement over the next quarter?
I think leaders are actually getting a lot of pressure, first of all, to use AI, whether you're a big organization or small. But that puts a pressure in terms of, instead of having a strategy for AI, they're just searching, the use cases where they can get quick value out of, and there's a huge danger. So I think if I had to think about how leaders actually start, the first thing is, where is value getting trapped right now? And you can measure value in different ways. You can measure it in terms of cost, in terms of revenue, experience, whatever it is. That's when you start to get into, okay, where are the delays, where's the rework, where's the handoffs, where are the errors? And I would start that as, step number one. The second is, then, what decisions do we need to make to unlock that value? So, what needs to be decided by whom, how often, right? And then you get into, okay, AI is not going to solve everything. You need to think about the whole gambit in terms of what is needed to get to the outcome and unlock the value that you have now prioritized. And if you strongly do those steps, that's when the economics actually start to pay dividends. and you focus on the right problems as opposed to kind of chasing different things with AI.
Dan, last word goes to you.
Yeah, I think Chanel really hit it there. I mean, I think if someone asked me, yeah, or how to get started with AI, I'd say don't start with AI. Go look at the things that don't work very well today, and they've probably felt too overwhelming to fix before. They're not anymore. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them that you can probably fix. Look at the process, figure out how it can be made more efficient, and then point an enterprising developer at it with a tool, and they can actually kind of tackle this much more easily than you think they could before. Unlock that value, kind of unmoor the value that's in there, that's been tethered into bad process or organization, bad design, or whatever. So start there. Start with the problems that AI can help you solve, and then just you've added a giant tool to your toolkit that is actually fairly accessible and doesn't take years and years and years to learn the way that some of the other tools have. I think that's the real win here.
Shanil Ebrahim, Dan Dickinson, thank you both for making sense of the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When it comes to AI transformation, I'm taking Dan's advice. Don't start with AI. Start with the mess that you've been avoiding, like the processes that no one has wanted to touch because they seemed too expensive to fix. Dan Dickinson has overseen 3 major transformations, and both he and Shanil agree that technology is rarely the hard part. The hard part is the years of process debt that are baked into your organization, and AI now makes that debt visible and, crucially, fixable. So there's step 1. Step 1 is also judgment. As Shanil points out, some inefficiencies are actually mission critical, particularly when your clients are people with feelings and a desire to be understood. So before you automate, understand why the work exists, because the fastest system isn't going to hold if it's also the loneliest one. And finally, the leadership model that got us here, managing functions, approving decisions, controlling risk, it's under renovation in real time. Shanil sees a new kind of leader emerging, someone who can step into the details, rapid test, see the big picture, and ultimately own the economics. They're not necessarily a coder or a technologist, but they are someone who understands enough to stop outsourcing their judgment to IT. So thank you again to Shanil Ebrahim and Dan Dickinson, and thanks to you, as always, for listening. You can reach us anytime at fullcircle@deloitte.ca, and please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.